Good morning, learners. Welcome to another Matherific episode here in Valenzuela Live. Again, I'm Teacher Precious from P.O. Valenzuela Elementary School, your FB Math teacher for this day. Just a few reminders to actively participate in our discussion. Again, kindly do the following. First, type your complete name, grade and section, subject teacher, and your school for attendance. Second, type your answers and your question after the discussion on the comment box below. Are you ready? I know you are, so let's begin. We are now on quarter 2, week 2 of our MELC, or the most essential learning competencies. And you are expected to learn how to find the missing term in a proportion, namely direct, inverse, and partitive, and to solve problems involving direct proportion, partitive proportion, and inverse proportion in different contexts such as distance, rate, and time using appropriate strategies and tools. Before we further dig in, let's have an activity entitled You Complete Me. So what you're going to do is to complete the word that is being described, and you are going to write your answer on the comment box below. So this is our first word. It is defined as the comparison between two quantities of the same kind and same unit. Okay, type in your answers below. I can see a lot of correct answers. So the first word is very good, our ratio. Next one, let's proceed with the second word. Second word is defined as each number in a ratio. So comment your answers below. Okay, so I can see that you've got all the correct answers. So number 2 or word number 2 is a third. Very good. Next one. It's a long word, but it is defined as the equality of two ratios. So, write your answer on the comment box below. Okay, so I can see that you got it also correct. So this is, or the word is, proportion. Very good again. Next one, let's proceed to the last two words. So this is the second and the third term in a ratio or in a proportion. Okay, so this is very good. So this is means. Last one. This is the first and fourth term in a ratio or in a proportion. So this is very good, the extremes. Excuse me, I just need to answer that phone call. Hello? Hi, Anna. What can I do for you? Well, we got your back. Just listen there and we are going to solve your problem. Anna's problem remind me of one of the types of proportion. Are you ready to learn what is that type of proportion? So let's continue. If you've ever made a rice, you know that the ratio is 1 part dry rice and 2 parts of water is important. If you are going to mess it up, and you'll be scooping a scooping gummy. So let's help Anna with her problem. For our given, we are going to write down that for 3 people, it is equivalent to the 2 cups of water, 1 cup of dry rice. And then for 12 people, we are going to use N to represent the number of cups of water and 4 cups of dry rice. So let's form the proportion first. So we are going to write 2:1, wherein 2:1 is equivalent to N:4, wherein 2 and N is equivalent to the number of cups of water, and 1:4 is equivalent to the number of dry rice, or number of cups of dry rice. And then that is in proportion form. We can also write that in a fraction form, wherein 2/1 is equivalent to N/4, wherein 2 and N is equivalent to the number of cup of water, and 1 and 4 is equivalent to the number of cups of dry rice. We are going to solve now and find N in the proportion. So we have 2:1 is equivalent to N:4. We are going to multiply first the means in this proportion, and then followed by the extreme. So we have 1 times N is equivalent to 2 times 4. So we have 1N is equivalent to 8. And then we are going to divide both sides by 1 to eliminate. And we will get 8N is equivalent to 8/1, or 8 only. So N is equivalent to 8. So in every 4 cups of dry rice, there should be 8 cups of water. And in direct proportion, we are going to remember that the product of the means is equal to the product of the extreme. So if we are going to substitute the value of N, which is 8, so we have 2 times 4, for the extreme is 8, and then 1 times 8, for the means is equivalent to 8. I'm going to, so for the direct proportion, or direct proportion states that it is a proportion that shows if one quantity increases, the other one will also increases, or vice versa, like our problem here. So let's call again Anna. Anna, are you still there? You need 8 cups of water for your recipe to cook for 12 people. You're welcome, Anna. Okay, so since we already know the first type of proportion, let's look at this problem which introduced us to the second type of proportion. So I have your problem wherein 8 men were given enough food for 20 weeks. So how long would the food last if there are additional or 2 additional men? So for this one, we are going to start it with representation. We are going to use N again. So let N be the number of weeks for the food to last. And then we are going to write our given. So we have here for the men, so we have 8 men, and then 8 men, and then 2 additional men, and 20 weeks. For the step 2, we are going to form the proportion. So I have here 8:10, wherein 8:10 is equivalent to the number of men, and N:20 is equivalent to the number of weeks. So if you're going to notice, this is different from the first one. So why do we have 10 here? 10 is equal to 8 men added 2 men. That's a total of 10 men. Let's try another form, which is in fraction form. So we have 8/10 is equivalent to N/20, wherein 8 over 10 is equivalent to number of men, and over 20 is the number of weeks again. Then we are going to cross multiply this. So we have 8 times 20 is equivalent to 10 times n. So for step 3, we are going to solve for the value of n. Since on step 2, we already formed the proportion, step 3, we are going to solve for the value of n. So we have 8 is to 10 is equivalent to n is to 20. So we are going to multiply the means and the extremes. So we start with 10 and n. So we have 10 times n. And then 8 times 20. So 10n is equivalent to 160. And then we are going to divide both sides by 10 to eliminate the value near the n. So we have 10n over 10 is equivalent to 160 over 10. So the answer or the value for n is 16. Next is, let's try it in another form. So this is in fraction form. So we have 8 over 10 is equivalent to 8 over 20. And then we are going to write down that this is the number of person or men, and then the number of days or the weeks. So cross multiply. So we have n times 10 is equals to 8 times 20. Then it will give us 10n is equivalent to 160. And then we are going to divide both sides again by 10 to eliminate the 10 on the value near the n. So we have 10 over n over 10 is equivalent to 160 over 10. So we have also n is equivalent to 16. Okay, so this type of proportion is what we call the inverse or indirect proportion. So it is defined as a proportion that states that if it increase in one quantity causes decreases in other quantity, or decrease in one quantity causes increase in other quantity. So like what happened in our problem or in our previous problem. So we have 8 is to 10. So since we have an additional men, 16 is to 20 is the number of weeks. So there is decrease in the number of weeks for their food to last. Let's move on to the last type of proportion. Let's look at this problem. A total of 132 stubs of learning packets is to be divided among 3 barangays in the ratio of 1:2 and 2:3. How many stubs will each barangay receive? So again, for step 1, we are going to use representation. Let n be the common factors for the stub for the 3 barangays. So number of stubs, we have 1n for the first barangay, 2n for the second barangay, and 3n for the third barangay. For step 2, we are going to express the ratios as proportion. So we have 1:2 is to 3 is equivalent is written as 1n is to 2n is to 3n. So for step 3, we are going to add the representation of the number of stubs and equate to the total number of stubs and solve for the value of n. So we have 1n plus 2n plus 3n is equivalent to 132, or 6n is equivalent to 132. So to eliminate again the value near the n or beside n, we are going to divide both sides by, to divide 6n by 6. And whatever you do on the other side, you are going to do it on the other side. So we have 6n over 6 is equivalent to 132 over 6. And this will give us a value of n is equivalent to 22. But since we get the n, we're not yet done. We are going to move for the step 4, which is to substitute the value of n, which is 22. So we have 1N is 1 times 22. So for the first barangay, it will receive 22 stubs. And then for the second barangay, 2N is equivalent to 2 times 22. So we have 44 for the second barangay. And then 3N, 3 times 22 will give us 66 for the third barangay. So for the first barangay, they will receive 22 stabs. For the second one, they will receive 44 stabs. And for the last or third barangay, will receive 66 stabs or learning packets stab. So the last proportion is what we call the partitive proportion. In this proportion, it shows that the division of a whole or a quantity into 2 or 3 or more equal or unequal parts, like our previous problem. Well, I think it's time for us to try activity number 1. In this activity, or in activity number 1, we are going to solve the missing term in the given proportion. Let's start with the first one. So, number 1 is 8 is to 60 is equivalent to 2 is to n. So, comment your answer on the comment box below. Okay, so let's answer this. We are going to start with the extreme, which is 8 times n is equivalent to 8n, and then with the means, 60 times 2 is equivalent to 120. And then, like the process, we are going to eliminate or divide both sides by 8. So we have 8n over 8 is equivalent to 120 over 8. And it will give us n is equivalent to 15. So the answer for number 1 is 15. Let's proceed to number 2. So for number 2, we have the proportion 5 is to 6 is equivalent to 30 is to n. So let's start solving. Write your answer in the comment box. Okay, so I can see that you are already able to solve this one. It's an easy one, right? So we have 5 times n is equivalent to 5n, and 6 times 30 is equivalent to 180. So like what we did on the first one or on the previous problems, we are going to eliminate again the value near the n or the value near the n. So we are going to divide both sides by 5. So 5n over 5 is equivalent to 180 over 5. So it will give us a value of 36. Very good again. Next one. Another easy problem or another easy equation. So we have 2 is to 3 is equivalent to 10 is to n. Comment your answers. Okay, so I can see that lots of you are putting your answers in the comment box. So let's continue. So we have 2 is to, we are going to multiply the extreme, which is 2 times n. It will give us 2n, and then 3 times 10 for the means, and it will give us 30. Now, again, we are going to divide both sides by 2. So we have 2n over 2 is equivalent to 30 over 2, and the n will give us a value of 15. Now, for the last one. So we have 3 is to n is equivalent to 3 is to 8, is equivalent to n is to 24. Okay, so I think you are all done. So we have 3 times 24, it will give us 72, and then 8 times n is equivalent to 8n. Then, like what we did on the other numbers, we are going to divide both sides again by the value of 8. So we will have n is equivalent to 9. Well, you are all awesome. Very good. So I think you're ready for the second or the activity number 2. Please prepare your pen and paper to solve the following. You will be given 30 seconds to choose the letter of the number that will complete the proportion. Type the letter of your answer on the comment box below. So here's number 1. Your timer starts now. 15 seconds. Okay, so time's up. Let's reveal the answer. The answer for this one is letter C. Very good. I think you've got it correct again. Let's proceed with the second one. Another 30 seconds for you. And seconds. Okay, time's up. So let's reveal the answer. Okay, so the correct answer for number 2 is letter P. Next one, let's have number 3. Another 30 seconds for you. In seconds. Okay, so time's up. Let's reveal the answer. Okay, so again, you've got it correct. Just a reminder, it should be in letters, not the numbers. Okay, let's proceed with the fourth one. 30 seconds again. Last 5 seconds. Okay, so time's up. Let's reveal the correct answer. Okay, so it's letter B. Next, and for the last number, another 30 seconds. Fifteen seconds. Okay, so time's up. And let's reveal the answer. Okay, so good job, learners. I know that you learned something today. But still, what I want you to do is to remember that in finding the missing term in a proportion, use the property of proportion, that is, the product of the means is equal to the product of the extremes. In solving word problems involving direct, indirect, and partitive proportion, follow the given steps. So, first, we represent the unknown by n, and then form the proportion that describes the problem, solve for the value of n, and then for partitive proportion, use n as the common factor of each quantity, form the equation. And also, remember that we have 3 types of proportion. So the first one is direct proportion, which states that it's a proportion that shows if one quantity increases, the other will also increase or vice versa. For indirect or direct proportion, it's a proportion that states that if it increase in one quantity, causes decrease in other quantity, or decrease in one quantity causes increase in the other quantity. And for the last type of proportion, which is the partitive, it is a proportion that shows the division of a whole or a quantity into two or more or three equal or unequal parts. So I think you have questions. Let's see. Mm. Can you give some real life situation of types of proportion? Well, for the direct proportion, we can say that the change in, or as an example, is the foods or the um, groceries, right? The food that we eat. When we added weight, let's say for example, we are going, or your mother is going to buy some chicken. Depends on the weight. Depending on the weight, if you put additional weight, then the amount of that chicken will increase it. So that is for the direct proportion. Next one, for the inverse proportion, we can say that in a family, if you are already if you are, or if you have 5 members of the family, and then your cousin came to visit, so your two cousins will came to visit, and you only have food for 5 people for the 3 days, then if there's an additional 3 or 2, therefore there will be a decrease in the food, or the um, for your food to last. So that is for the inverse. And then the last one, let's have this question. So I think I already give this, no, but I'm going to answer this, no. So what are the 3 types of proportions? So again, the 3 types of proportions are the direct proportion, the inverse proportion, inverse or direct, and then the partitive proportion. Well, thank you so much for listening. I know that you have other concerns, but I know that your classroom teacher will gladly answer those questions. Before I end, I would like to give you this homework. So, answer self-learning module quarter 2, week 2. What's more, Roman numeral number 1, try this, and Roman numeral number 2, keep trying. Thank you so much for listening. See you next time here in Valenzuela FB Live.